You probably think O. Henry is just a candy bar, or else he's the guy who wrote that famous Christmas story with the twist ending. But that's like saying Ray Bradbury is just a Twizzler, or the guy who wrote that famous story about firemen who set books on fire. So let me introduce you to the funniest kidnapped victim in American literature, one of fiction's greatest safecrackers, and the most stubborn homeless man in New York City, and many more. Greetings, book lovers. As many of you know, August is the month for two reading events, one being Garb August, brought to you by the BookTube channel Criminale, and Short Story Summer, which is the brainchild of the literate Texan Randy Ray, for which this video has been made. Anybody can participate in Short Story Summer, the only requirement being to read one short story. It's a pretty low bar to clear, don't you think? And you can find links to each of those channels for Garb August and for Short Story Summer in the description below. Now, for this episode, I read 10 short stories last week by the man whose name is synonymous with American short stories, O. Henry, or as his parents called him, William Sidney Porter. Now, O. Henry seems to occupy a strange niche within the hallowed halls of American literature. On the one hand, there is a major literary award named after him, and along with that comes an anthology of the award-winning short stories published each year. Yet, his reputation among critics and academia is largely that he was just a gimmick writer of trivial pieces that had clever twist endings. He also writes in an elegant and somewhat formal style, which critics have demeaned as pseudo-intellectual. He made frequent use of vocabulary that would send readers running to their dictionaries. In fact, I had to look up several words during the course of my reading, such as this one, ratiocination, which means the use of logic and rational thinking to solve a problem. And yes, I know you're not supposed to use a form of a word to define the word, but go ahead, fail me. Personally, I love that highfalutin language, and interspersed along with some turn-of-the-century slang, it creates an ironic contrast between the greater society at large, business and government, and the downtrodden working class characters that he writes his stories about. For example, in his story, The Cop and the Anthem, a homeless man in New York City spends all of his time hanging out on the park benches and sleeping on the park benches. And come the cooler part of the year, he's got to find suitable shelter from the impending cold weather. And this is what O. Henry writes. Soapy's mind became cognizant of the fact that the time had come for him to resolve himself into a singular committee of ways and means to provide against the coming rigor. O. Henry is also criticized for committing that writer's taboo of telling, not showing, and also for inserting his own authorial voice into the story, breaking that fourth wall and addressing the reader directly with some moralizing, such as in The Gift of the Magi, when at the conclusion he writes, And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts, such as they are the wisest. So, that's O. Henry giving you the moral of the story in case you couldn't glean it yourself. And of course there are the twist endings, which critics dismiss as just, mere contrived gimmicks. But they serve a purpose. O. Henry likes to, show how life can pivot on just one ironic twist. And he's often dismissed today as just that twist ending guy. But that's like dismissing Agatha Christie as just the butler did it lady. The best O. Henry stories, succeed because the characters come first. And the twist simply seals that emotional effect. So, last week, for Short Story Summer, I read 10 O. Henry stories. And if you don't have any of his books, all of his stories can be found readily available on the net, free of charge to read on one particular site anyways, AmericanLiterature.com. And there's also several cheap ebooks available on Amazon, 99 cents, $1.99, of the complete works of O. Henry. And there's over 250 of them. Now, some sources will say he wrote, like over 600. But that's to count little trifling things like newspaper fillers and just whatever else kind of trifling things, his grocery list. But his canon is generally considered to consist of about 260-ish stories. And the amazing thing is that they were all, or almost all, written in the last 10 years of his life. If you're new to O. Henry, you can take my list as kind of a O. Henry starter pack. They're all enjoyable stories, even if a few are a little weaker than others. And I'll start with his most famous and most popular ones, starting with number 1, The Gift of the Magi. In this story, a young couple, both in their early 20s, or at least the husband is, he's stated to be 22, I believe, in the story. They each sacrifice their greatest, most treasured personal possession in order to buy the other a Christmas gift. And yes, the ending is famous, and it's often criticized for being over-sentimental. But what makes this story enduring is the warmth and the generosity at its heart. The second story I read was The Ransom of Red Chief, written in 1907, and I laughed till I stopped while reading this, I tell you. This could be the funniest short story in American literature. It involves two men who decide to kidnap a young boy about 10 years old and to demand a $2,000 ransom from his family. Well, they find out that they gotten more than they bargained for, and they soon lower their demand to $1,500 because maybe his family doesn't think he's worth $2,000. Now, maybe the word genius is overstating it, but for the sake of discussion, let me just say this story is a great example of O. Henry's comic genius. This third story was my introduction to O. Henry way back 55 years ago in school. It's called The Last Leaf, and it concerns a young lady who is dying of pneumonia. And while the doctor is optimistic that she'll be able to recover, the young lady herself has been looking at this wall with ivy, a dying, withering ivy vine on a wall outside of the bedroom she's in, because it's winter, you know. And she keeps watching one leaf after another fall off. And she's convinced herself that when the last leaf falls off the vine is also when she will breathe her last and be gone. An elderly artist comes in and attempts to save this young lady's life. And of course, that's where the twist ending comes in, so I can't tell you any more than that. But sentimental? Maybe. But I believe it's a beautifully constructed story without being manipulative. But then, I'm just a sentimental kind of guy. Now, the next story you've heard me quote above already. This is The Cop and the Anthem. This is about the homeless man in a New York City park who needs to, he needs to find shelter from the winter weather that's closing in, and so he tries to get himself arrested so he can be nice and cozy in jail. But the ending on this one illustrates that sometimes you just can't win for losing. The next story is after 20 years, two old friends arrange to meet up 20 years after they parted. One went west and one remained in New York City. No one was going to ever, yank him away from the city he loves. And so the story involves the one man, the man who came back from out west, waiting at the spot they agreed upon for his friend to arrive. This one's only a few pages long, but for me it was one of the weaker stories. The setup just felt a little contrived and it just didn't work for me. Story number 6 was A Retrieved Reformation, a story of redemption. A master safecracker has decided to go straight. However, the police are still on his tail because of previous crimes he committed. Unlike in a previous story mentioned, though, the safecracker meets a different fate when he turns his life around. So, book number 7 is what? The Furnished Room. Furnished Room is the darkest story on this list. It might even be one of the darkest stories he wrote. It's pretty grim. A young man is searching all over New York City for the woman he loved and lost track of. He comes upon a cheap hotel in which he rents a room, and the room happens to be furnished, and it still includes possessions from some of the previous residents who rented that room. As he's sitting there in the gloom of the room, a gust of wind comes in through the window, and it fills the air with the exact distinctive fragrance of the perfume his lady friend used to wear. And that's all I can say about that. The story is atmospheric, it's melancholy, and it's unforgettable. Moving on to number 8. Let's see what number 8 is. The Skylight Room. This is another one that it didn't quite hit the mark for me. A struggling woman rents the cheapest and most topmost room, and it's also the smallest room in this hotel or boarding house, whatever it is. I mean, how small is it? It's described as being like a coffin. But like I said, it's the cheapest and it's all she could afford. And so the lady rents the room. And the room has no window, but it has a skylight in the roof or the ceiling, through which she can view the star Gamma in the constellation Cassiopeia. But she gives the star her own name. She calls it Billy Jackson. Now, this story serves as a critique of the social hierarchy in the city. The richest people get the bottom floor with the finest rooms, while second floor, third floor are each in turn lower class people, and up to her room, which is only suitable for the poorest. As I said, this story didn't quite do it for me. O. Henry didn't punch the point home quite like he does with most stories. Maybe he should have inserted him into the story and explained the moral to me. and then we come to story number 9, The Green Door. This was probably the weakest one. So that's 3 now, but hey, a 700 batting average is pretty good, I think. I haven't read an anthology or collection yet where 100% of the stories, hit the mark with every reader. A man's walking down the city sidewalk when he passes a man standing in front of a dentist office handing out cards, but the card he gets just has 3 words on it: The Green Door. And what follows is just a little mystery and adventure. But like I said, it just didn't hit the mark with me. So then that brings us to the last story on my list, called The Trimmed Lamp. This was interesting for the fact that O. Henry, while it does have a twist ending, it's not, he doesn't explicitly, bring it out in the same way that he does the earlier stories. You'll have to do a little bit of thinking, but only a little bit. It's not rocket science. But the story concerns 2 girlfriends, each with 2 completely different jobs that pay completely differently too. The one girl is a laborer. She irons clothes, presses clothes at a laundry, but that's probably grueling, hot work, but she makes good money, $18 a week, while her girlfriend works in a much nicer environment. She's a sales clerk at an upscale department store. And although she only makes $8 a week compared to her friend's $18, she would rather work there because, she longs to be married, and she hopes to snag one of the many millionaires who patronize this department store. And you may be able to tell just from that synopsis how the story will twist at the end, but like I said, he doesn't make it quite as obvious as the previous stories. So that was my reading list for Short Story Summer, Week 1. And whether you agree with the critics or not on whether The stories of O. Henry are worth discussion as serious literature. One thing I'll say for them is that they all make for enjoyable reading. And in the end, that's what we all read our books for, the enjoyment. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week with my next installment for Garb August. Be there, or be square.